Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of YHB TV, your handmade business. Your handmade business webinar series that we do weekly at Thursdays at 2 o'clock Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern time, and the rest of you guys can figure it out in the middle. So don't have time to go through every time zone. But this is our weekly web series where we talk to each other about what's going on with different topics this month and try to discuss things that you guys might be going through that help you relate it back to business. And so this month we have a theme. We have a theme every month that we're tackling, and this month is about taking stock. So we're going to discuss that a little bit today. And then, yeah, I guess that's mostly what these are. I'm forgetting our spiel. Usually we have a guest too, so I think that's throwing this off. I'm Sharon Fain. I am the founder and co-director of Academy of Handmade, along with Isaac Watson, who's here. And so we're here to answer any questions you guys have and help dispense with a little bit of encouragement and some advice where it makes sense. If you're catching this on the replay, make sure that you are signed up for our newsletter as well too. Go to academyofhandmade.com and get in for that. So yeah, let's dive into it a little. First, Isaac, it's December. Things are crazy for everyone. I feel like this is when makers, I feel like, go into their Santa's workshop hibernation mode, where they're just little elves cranking things out right now. And that's usually the opposite for Isaac and I, since neither of us at this time have maker businesses. But how has your December and holidays been so far, Isaac?
Actually, even though I'm not actively making anything, I still feel like it's been a relatively crazy December for me. It's been very busy. I've got a house project we've been trying to finish up, getting the tree up and lights on the house for the first time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Kept it very simple this year, just white lights straight across the gutters. But, that took an afternoon, as it does.
I definitely was walking around my neighborhood the other day and was thinking, like, there's definitely some personality that gets unveiled when you see somebody's placement of lights. Like, it's definitely the sort of, like, I'm just gonna dump lights everywhere on my fence, like wherever. I kind of don't mind Christmas exploded in your face.
Yeah, definitely. So our next door neighbor last year, they had a good amount of lights. They had, like the lighted deer out with them like moving heads and stuff, which
like inflatable stuff or like the plastic kind?
No, like the wireframe.
Yes. Okay.
And they got icicles on the gutters and everything like that. This year it got worse. I mean, and by worse I mean better. But we saw him out there the other day, and he said. He said, yeah, there's a 12-step program. And he's like, I'm part of it. And he's like, it's just the weather's been so nice lately that I just keep putting more and more out there. I can't help myself.
That's funny.
So here I'm putting up lights on our gutter. And of course, it doesn't compare at all to the next door neighbors. But he sees me putting them up on the ladder, and he goes, you want me to save you a seat at the meeting?
You're like, I'm good.
Yes, John. Yes,
I'm here with my spreadsheeted lights that have been perfectly put in place.
You have no idea the childhood that I was raised with, Sharon.
This is why you're now a spreadsheeter.
My dad and my brother and I.
We're in discussions on this.
Yeah, there are design standards and techniques that were developed over years of doing Christmas lights on the family house. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah. So it's really hard for me to just have lights on the gutters and not anywhere else, because I want to go all out, but I know that you have to build over the years and just do a little bit more each year.
Okay, that's an interesting a layering technique, I guess.
I mean, unless you have like $3,000 to drop on Christmas lights and you can just go all out. But
there are two lighting trends that puzzle me, or well, the one lighting trend that puzzles me the most, I guess, is it's just how they have like the reflective like hologram onto your, I'm sure
the projection and the lasers.
Yeah.
I hate that.
And it looks like sometimes it can be done cool in a tasteful way, but most of the time it looks like your house is infected with an STD. Like
that does not meet my design standards, Sharon.
And it's just like this is a weird effect the way that this is done sometimes. Also, I don't know what tradition this is rooted in, but obviously I think I've discussed that I live in Koreatown in Los Angeles, but there's a dragon, a Christmas dragon, an inflatable Christmas dragon dwelling in a couple yards.
Wow. I'm fascinated by this. If you are just joining us, this is not a webinar entirely about Christmas lights. So please introduce yourself. We're just digressing a little bit before we get into what we're actually here to talk about today.
And if you would like to tell us your favorite holiday decoration or something that a trend in holiday decorating that you find wacky, just feel free to let us know too.
And if you really like the projection,
we're sorry.
I'm sorry, but you're entitled.
I've seen it done a couple times where it's not bad. And at Halloween there was a couple that I didn't mind. But overall, if you're not doing it right, it does look your house has smallpox.
Yeah, I've always just wondered about like shining the lasers through your windows and like what happens if you like peek out the window and you're like, my eyes.
Oh, yeah. I hadn't really thought of that too. It's probably far enough away, depending. Anyway.
On that note,
we've got things to talk about today, which is we are going to be discussing how to not be captive to the past in your business. And I think obviously this month's theme about taking stock is I think it's very easy when we start to reflect when the year ends and we get very like, oh, what did this last year look like? And it can be very easy to get trapped in what happened before and what this year meant and things like that, and not look forward. So we wanted to talk about that a little bit. You wanted to share a couple things, Isaac, about how people can not be captive to the past?
Yeah, I mean, well, this is a time when a lot of people, this time, right now, you're all crazy with the holidays. We get that. But at the end of December and going into January, it's a time when a lot of small business owners and makers in particular start to reflect on how the year went. You've usually, for most makers, you've had your best quarter of the year sales wise, because that's just how it goes. And so you're thinking about what's next, you're recuperating a little bit, and it can be really easy to fall into looking back on the past and kind of dwelling on it, or just not really using the rearview mirror as a productive tool to help you move forward. So there are a few things that we wanted to mention as you start to think about how your year went and what you want to do this next year. One of those is that hindsight is 2020. The old saying, hindsight is 2020. But you have to realize that when you were actually making mistakes or failed at something along the way, your vision was not that clear. So you don't want to beat yourself up about things. You don't want to be too hard on yourself for saying, oh, well, I should have done that. I'm very much a no regrets kind of guy. And so for me, like, I look back on something that, even if something went well or something didn't go well, and I see it as a learning experience. It's like, oh, well, what do I know now that I didn't know then? And how can I apply what I do know now to the future? So don't let the mistakes drag you down, I guess. Use that.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I feel like I feel like when I look back, I'm like, how did I not see that? How was that? Like, that's what I tend to do. Is like, man, why did I make that decision? And like, I think that realizing that is that, you know, like you said, like we didn't have everything that we know now, and like we're always just trying to make the best decisions we can at the time. So we can't really beat ourselves up too much about it.
It's true. It's true. The other thing that I was thinking about is that kind of on the flip side of that, and I know it's easy to look back and focus on things that went wrong, especially if you're doing a post-mortem or an autopsy of the year that went terribly. But you want to make sure I would say you don't hang your hat on what worked well. So just because something worked really well for you this past year or in a particular season doesn't mean it's always going to work well for you going forward. So keep in mind that the new year and changes in the economy or in your own business or your changes in your goals might mean that you need to be able to, or that you won't be able to replicate your past successes exactly. So there are a couple of things that you can do around that. You can have alternative plans or options to work from. You can pay attention to changes or trends in the market and in your craft to see how you can adapt what went well to continue to work well with those changes. And just keep an open mind and a flexible attitude toward what you can do. You know, this is one of the reasons that people can tend to get bummed out about certain shows, is because they think, oh, well, if I did well this year, then I must do well at this show every year. And then if suddenly a show doesn't go well, they're like, oh, that sucks. Maybe something's wrong with the show, or something's wrong with me, or something, you know, there could be other factors at play.
I think the same thing too is like we do this a lot with social media. I feel like, you know, everyone's really amped up on Facebook, and then all of a sudden Facebook isn't working well. And then we're really amped up on Instagram, and then all of a sudden Instagram isn't working well. And that's not to say like you need to always abandon everything or whatever, but like don't think that like just because Instagram worked well this year that it's going to for sure 100% happen the same way the next year, you know? So there's a lot of things that change and dictate these experiences.
It kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you've seen that Portlandia skit where they're all having a party in the sun, and then the cloud moves in, and then they like break it all down and they go chasing after the next sunny spot.
Yes.
And then they're enjoying themselves for a little bit, and then the cloud moves in again, and then they have to go find, anyway. We've already talked about how I don't like Portlandia, but it seemed apt.
We've had a few references about that today. So when you're looking back then, I think it's good to talk about like, so, I mean, Isaac and I both are huge advocates of like, you know, evaluating and like taking stock and like really like looking at how you're doing on a regular basis, whether it's, you know, monthly for financials or it's quarterly for your whole business or however you want to do it, or yearly for like a real, you know, business, you know, thorough examination of everything. Because I do think there's benefits to the short term, and then also benefits to having like a long view of what. But so we wanted to make sure that we talked a little bit about how to not get stuck when you're doing this, with getting stuck in the past and feeling like, you know, you're trapped by what decisions you've made before. So one of the things that I think is helpful is to always make sure that whenever you're trying to evaluate or do a postmortem of some kind, that you're towards learning and getting better for the future. So it's not about getting into the nitty gritty of why you suck and why you're a failure. It's more about getting into, okay, where were the points where I could have learned things? Where did I not have the correct information? Where did I make a miscalculation? Where did I have a misstep? Where did I not have the correct, I wasn't at the correct place in my business, like all of those things. Like, I think that's super helpful. I also think it's helpful to not just look at the failures, which obviously are huge teachable moments, but to look at the wins too. And we had a blog post that talked about last year, healthy, like it was about healthy relationships in the new year, but it also had a maker's resolutions thing in there, which also does a bit of wins and also being critical of what went wrong in the last year, if you guys want to check that out too. But that's one thing that I would say for sure. I think Isaac's putting that into the chat right now.
I am working on that. I tried to paste in something that was not that link.
I've had that before.
Blog post.
But I do think that, the end of the year is a good time to reevaluate the relationships that you have with lots of different things and consider like how those are going to change. So, which is a little bit different than I think, which is always looking at ourselves, but I think it's good to just look at the circumstances and people around us too.
Yeah, exactly. It's not always about you. So a couple things that I would suggest when you are looking back is to make sure you don't start to do any kind of annual review process or any kind of planning when you're in a bad mood or when you're feeling burned out. Give yourself some space and some time to breathe and to recuperate a little bit, and then dive into it. You want to be in a good place, both mentally, emotionally, physically. You want to be feeling ready to tackle the next year. Otherwise, you will just end up dwelling on the past and looking at what went wrong and feeling terrible about the whole thing. So make sure you're in a good mood and that you've moved past holiday burnout mode and into let's do it. Let's go into next year kind of mode.
In my case, you might just be hangry and you might just need to eat something, and then all of a sudden you're ready you're taking stock.
Yep. And I would say related to that is it doesn't have to happen all at once either. Like, you don't need to dedicate 3 days to a review process where you're going to vision your entire year and go crazy. You can do it bit by bit. You also don't have to do it before the year end. A lot of people get hung up on New Year's resolutions, and we all know that they usually fail because it's really hard to adopt a habit for a year, especially when you only set an intention at the beginning of the year. So it's okay to revisit. It's okay to bite off in smaller chunks, things like that. But the other thing I was going to mention is to lean on a business friend or a mentor about your lessons learned, and just kind of use them as a sounding board to see if they ring true with them, or if you're missing a particular angle on maybe why something happened the way it did, or just to do like a gut check on whether or not you're being too harsh on yourself. Having that kind of peer or maker friend or mentor, whatever you want to call them, on hand to kind of talk things through is hugely helpful. I know I do that with my best friend, who has a very keen business mind, and she's always ready to be a little critical with me and like tell me where I'm not seeing things that I should be and things like that. Sharon and I have done it specific to Academy of Handmade, and just kind of giving each other gut checks. So that can be really, really helpful.
I think too, the reason why that's so helpful is that you can really get caught in the minutia of your, trying to figure out lessons, and you kind of get caught in the minutia of them instead of like the bigger picture of what they're telling you. And so you can sometimes take away some really weird lessons if you don't have better perspective. So I think getting other people's advice and opinions on that is huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't want to get hyper focused on, oh, well, this one like little tiny trinket was like the hit seller. Why was that? How can I leverage that to like make up for all of my sales this next year? Because maybe that was a fluke. Maybe it was just unique to that particular show or something like that. So yeah, don't get too buried in the weeds that way. And a business friend is helpful to help you break out of that.
Totally. All right. Well, I think those were basically our points for today. If you guys have any questions, you can put it in there. But as we're starting to wrap this up, I will mention that if you're subscribed to this, you're subscribed to the whole month of December, which is we only have one more after this next week, and then all of January too. So you're in for all of it. So don't worry if Holiday Brain is forgetting to register for January. This is also part of the January series. But also I want to mention that next week, we are really excited to talk about what our 2018 predictions are. So we're going to get our crystal ball out. Like, we would really like to literally have a crystal ball, but I don't know if we'll able to craftify that in time. But yes, we'd like to start looking at what we think is going to be happening in 2018 for makers, and just our thoughts in general. So make sure you come back for that. At the very least, try to watch it maybe while you're doing some work. Yeah, and we will try to catch you on social media, or back here next week. I think that's basically it right now. It's the end of the year, guys. We're just here to be supportive and encouraging however we can.
It's true. And I was going to say, if you're a maker who likes to listen to things as you go, but maybe you aren't near a computer, you can't play this, check out the podcast.
That's right. If you've missed any episodes, you're going to want to make them up and get on that. So do that as well too. academyofhandmade.com/podcast.
It's in the chat.
There you go.
2 more episodes coming out before Christmas, or before the end of the year, I should say. And then we'll be on a brief break and back into it. It's going to be awesome.
All right, guys. Good luck with all of your holiday makings. And we'll see you back here next week.
Have fun making.